Hello everyone, and thank you for taking your time to join us today. My name is Adam Hawthorne. I'm a member of the Diversity Inclusion Working Group. I'm privileged to welcome you not only to the launch of the first showcase webinar of our Women in Engineering recording series, but also to the actual launch of the project. Joining us today are panelists Laura Brown and Joanne Tan. Some quick navigation for attendees using GoToWebinar for the first time. Please be aware of the chat panel to send questions and queries to us, the organisers and the panellists. If you have any questions directly for the working group or for the speakers, please do put them in the question panel and we'll try and get those answered. If not in the Q&A, then to send the answers to you later on. So that Q&A will be hosted on our LinkedIn group. Both attendees, speakers and organisers will be directed there for more interactions. Please also note the feedback form at the end. We will look forward to hearing your suggestions and comments to improve. So just again, this is the first webinar conducted by the IChemE Diversity Inclusion Working Group, organised by the Regional Diversity and Inclusion Groups, both in Aberdeen and London. So just a little bit more about the working group. It's an IChemE member-led group. It's run by members for the benefit of members and to help inform the institution's policy. The first group was set up in London at the end of the presidential term of Judith Hackett, IChemE's second female president. During that term, we signed up to the Royal Academy of Engineering Diversity Concordat. The group that was established embraced its principles and aims to promote equality and inclusion principles and practices in the chemical engineering community in particular. Our first tasks are focusing on the visible and sometimes hidden or invisible characteristics. Our aim was initially to help monitor diversity and attitudes via a survey that IChemE had not, that IChemE had not done before. That was commissioned in 2014. Encouraged by that example, other groups formed, including Aberdeen's. Now there are a wider group acting cooperatively and collaboratively. Our main focus for 2016 in the first half will be on women in engineering, and the second half of the year will be focusing on the disability, including topics such as neurodiversity. Now, an engineer uses the skills one has to make things work and to solve problems. Engineers make and support our quality of life through transportation, medicine, food, entertainment, space exploration, and environmental management. Chemical engineering is considered the branch of engineering that converts raw materials into useful everyday products. Having one sex get the opportunity to do that, and therefore half the human talent pool, does not make sense. So we need to encourage some relatable role models and ambassadors to be more accessible. The Women Engineering Showcase is a series of recordings that share the life journey of a female engineer, what she does in her line of work, how she came to studying chemical engineering, and what are her future aspirations. We hope that these stories of these women will help inspire future generations to become not only become engineers, but also help working engineers live a more fulfilling career. We're going to start with Laura Brown. Now, Laura is studying for her MN in chemical engineering at Imperial College London. She grew up in the United States and is a dual US-UK citizen. She's a mature student, and before studying chemical engineering, she was a managing editor for the International Wine and Food Society, one of the oldest wine and gastronomic societies in the world. She received the Grand Diplôme with distinction from Le Cordon Bleu London. In Portland, Oregon, US, she owned a restaurant serving North Indian food with inspiration of French and North American cuisine. She also manufactured desserts for small groceries and other local retailers, which is where she became interested in food manufacturing and ultimately chemical and process engineering. Let's hear from Laura and how she decided to start her journey in chemical engineering.
My name is Laura Brown, and I'm studying chemical engineering at Imperial College. I'm in my third year. Why I decided to study chemical engineering is kind of a long story. I'm a mature student, and before I decided to return to university, I owned a restaurant where I was also the executive chef. The thing I enjoyed most about being a chef was experimenting with the raw ingredients and turning them into products that people wanted to buy. The challenge, and this is what I particularly enjoyed, was developing procedures that made these products consistently good. When I made the decision to return to university, I thought I would study chemistry or biology, so I volunteered at a neurology research lab. And there I met a woman completing her PhD who had done an undergraduate degree in chemical engineering. She told me about her studies, and she had really enjoyed them, so I did a bit of research and talked to other engineers, and I found out that many of the things I enjoyed about the restaurant are things that many chemical engineers do every day, like research and development and cost management. Chemical engineering is a really challenging course. It requires a lot of problem solving and analytical skills, as well as technical knowledge. So when you do come to grips with a problem, it's really satisfying because you're drawing on a lot of different skills and not just memorizing an answer. I've been involved as a student representative from my university to the Young Members Forum of my local IChemE group. I've gotten to help organise events for other London students, like a tour of Imperial's carbon capture and storage pilot plant, and at the same time I've gotten to network with young professional engineers and other students that I may not have otherwise met. Although chemical engineering courses tend to have a larger percentage of female students than other engineering disciplines, my year is still only about 1/3 female. I think there is still a glass ceiling for women in higher positions in the workforce, and this hasn't gone away. But I think that glass ceiling is constantly being pushed up thanks to the diversity policies of companies and the efforts of groups like IChemE and WISE to get more women to not just study STEM subjects, but to work in STEM careers. And of course, thanks to those women in STEM careers who just by doing their jobs act as positive role models for girls. Although food manufacturing is what initially interested me about ChemEng, one thing I've realized about a chemical engineering degree is that you can do just about anything with it. There are so many career possibilities that it can be a little hard to choose. But one challenge that I think I might like to help tackle is how the world will meet its future energy needs. That should keep me busy.
Well, thank you, Laura, for sharing the start of your journey into chemical engineering. The next up we have is Gemma Cody. Gemma is a technical safety engineer at Wood Group PSN. She obtained her Masters of Engineering from Heriot-Watt University in Edinburgh. After graduation, Gemma started working as a researcher in pilot plants, specializing in manufacturing fertilizers, pharmaceuticals, and dyes. She then moved on to GSK as a continual improvement leader, where she focused on improving the working environment in a pharmaceutical manufacturing plant, and has also worked at Coca-Cola in North London. The highlights of Gemma's career include working on a novel dye-making oscillating baffled reactor, and improving the working environment in the biggest pharmaceutical plant which made drugs for AIDS. Let's hear Gemma talk about her story and the diverse fields she has worked in.
My name is Gemma Cody and I'm a technical safety engineer. I'm currently working at Wood Group PSN. So where I'm working at the moment, I'm currently at Wood Group PSN in Aberdeen. That's my desk there. I'm a senior technical safety engineer, and I transferred to this role and also to oil and gas about 18 months ago. So previous to that, I've been working around 8 years within the pharmaceutical and the FMCG industries. That's the fast-moving consumer good industries. I've been doing pilot plant research and design. I've been mostly working within operations, supporting process and continual improvements. And also I've spent some time on the shop floor as a shift team leader. So this is a few of the places I've worked at. This is where I am right now in Shell in Aberdeen. I've also had about 4 years at GSK in Dartford, just outside London. That's one of the members of my team as shift team leader at CCE, and I've also had a few little stints at AstraZeneca and Syngenta. Okay, so what's it like on a normal day at work? Well, I cycle to work. I always try and find somewhere I'm close to work enough to cycle. I have some breakfast in the canteen, and I work in an open plan office. So predominantly I prepare technical safety documentation. So it's mostly a desk job. I work with process engineers, instrument engineers, electrical and structural engineers, and we review proposed oil and gas designs, and we review the way that these designs are constructed. And we're looking for risks that could potentially lead to a major disaster such as Piper Alpha. So in terms of the consequence, it would be a major consequence, but these events are very unlikely. So sometimes takes a bit of some skills to convince people to look at these risks because they're so rare. And so we implement controls to prevent this from happening by amending the design and the construction methods. We also carry out up to maybe 3 risk assessments a week, and that would usually be in a meeting room with a computer and a screen. And I do lead most of those informal reviews, but if we were ever to have a bigger review like a HAZOP, we'd call an independent specialist in. And also I've visited site a few times, although this is predominantly a desk job. I'm working on onshore facilities, but I have started to work on some offshore facilities as well, and there is the opportunity there to go offshore, but technical safety don't tend to go and do site visits like the other disciplines do. Okay, so just because I've only been in this role for 18 months, I thought I'd maybe describe what it was like on my previous roles. So just before here I was a shift team leader, and I was working 12-hour shifts on the continental shift pattern. So it's a bit of a complicated shift pattern, but it involves days and nights, sort of three days and then a few days off and then 3 nights, and it continues like that for 3 weeks, and then we get a week off. I've also worked as a continual improvement leader, as a bit of a fancy title there, but I basically chaperoned, or was given 1 or 2 processes to look after and to improve, to write all the the documentation for, and also just to identify improvements to improve the efficiency, eliminate quality defects, and improve the safety. I probably spent about 50% of my time writing procedures, and I would write them by reading a lot of technical manuals, and then deciphering that into sort of layman's language for the shop floor. So I'd be working with the shop floor as well to ensure that it was there was no ambiguity. Also spent quite a lot of time on the shop floor, so if there was problems on the facilities, sometimes we were supporting day-to-day work. If the production shut down, then we would be helping problem solve and helping getting the right people there to fix the problem as soon as possible. But also if there was any other defects, we would lead to some problem solving workshops, or sort of on the shop floor, on whiteboards. And we'd brainstorm and find out what the problem was. I also spent a bit of time in workshops, which is a bit more of a formal way of doing that, maybe spending a week off the shop floor with the operators, making long-term improvements. So production, or the shop floor, it's very different from my job at the moment. It's much more dynamic. Every day is very different. You're moving a lot more, you're sometimes sitting at your desk, sometimes on the shop floor, and it requires a range of different skills. So obviously the problem solving skills, also sort of people skills, also project management, and reporting targets to senior management. So every day we start with a morning meeting and we would report the figures of our process to say that we were on track. The next one. So why did I choose to get into that line of work? Well, in production, I guess that was one of the first roles I went into. I was specialising in pharmaceuticals, so one of my first roles, I had a few roles, summer placements, but one of my first roles after university was at GSK. but in production, it is very stimulating. It's very exciting. You know, the time goes very quickly, but it's this fine line between very stimulating and quite stressful. You also are constantly firefighting, where you're usually, although you know, with the best of intentions, you're usually spending most of your time treating the symptoms, and you have less time to look at the long term. So I just got into my current line of work as a technical safety engineer because I fancied having using more of my technical skills, but also enjoying a desk job for a bit, working daytime hours, and you know, I just fancied a change from the firefighting. Although it's exciting, I fancied a change to sort of have the time to carefully look at design solutions, and also I do enjoy running risk assessments because I used to do that on the plant as well. And I'm passionate about safety. So I still value my time within production because that gave me a real life reflection on how designed or implemented, and it was never boring. So how's my experience been like working in a predominantly male workforce? Well, first of all, if you'd asked me that about 10 years ago, I would say it made no difference. And you know, there were other females that I was working with. I think one of the very first female engineers that I met, who got me on one of my industrial placements, she said she was definitely the only female engineer that she knew for about 20 years. But anyway, I did learn subtle differences in how some individuals treated me. It was never very obvious. But yes, there's definitely some subtle differences. And you learn to pick that up. It's never that obvious. But I guess it really depends where you're working, what type of role that you're working in. I say it's probably less of an issue in technical roles, because I'd like to think at least that technical abilities can stand for themselves. But there are few female examples in managerial roles or shop floor roles. Maybe because females can be seen to be out of place. It's not always out of maliciousness, it's just perhaps people aren't used to it. And I think I have come across some preconceptions. I almost know straight away if I ever go into that role again, people will probably make assumptions that I'm academic or career chasing or snobby, and it sometimes takes time to break down those preconceptions. And it did take some time for my team and even production managers to get used to me, but they did in the end, and it was quite a rewarding experience to gain their respect and to break down those preconceptions. One place that although would be quite surprising, probably the most sort of the most prejudices probably are actually coming from other females, strangely enough. I guess maybe in some places when females are used to being the only female, you know, they like to feel quite special, and they're not always so professional with you. And I find that mostly with administrators, strangely enough. I guess they're sort of used to sort of looking after the boys, and they're not always quite sure how to deal with other women. Okay, next one. So why did I choose to study chemical engineering? Well, I found that science subjects for me were, I don't know if I'd say easy, but I could do them. I could get better marks than I could in other subjects. I did find them interesting. I found it easy to learn. It was pure sciences. Although I liked them, I sort of felt that it didn't always translate into quick real-life results, and I wanted to do something that was practical, that I felt that was useful to people, and maybe that I could see the results of my work fairly quickly. I chose chemical engineering to keep my options open, because you can be a chemical engineer in so many different industries, and I already have. I've worked in pharmaceuticals, oil and gas, and I've also worked in a field called operational excellence, which is more to do with managerial skills and making improvements. And also you can go into, so you can go into lots of different roles as well. So you could become technical, you could have skills that would be useful on the shop floor, you could be managerial, and they also look for these sorts of skills in lots of other jobs like consultancy, for example. Chemical engineer at the time had the highest salary, so I suppose that was a factor. And I chose Heriot Watt University because they specialised in engineering, obviously from the Watt. It was in Edinburgh, I quite liked Edinburgh. And I chose Heriot Watt because it was sort of on the outskirts of Edinburgh, so it was near nature and the countryside, and I thought, and it was, there was less distractions there, so I thought I could get on with my study more there and then go into town when I wasn't studying. So how did I know about chemical engineering when I was at school? I have to think back now, it was quite a while ago. I think there was an open day, I think it was Aberdeen University, and we were talking about chemistry and chemical engineering, and I do remember a colourful chemistry demonstration. I actually arranged some work experience myself because I wanted to make sure I was making the right decision, and I actually did this with a few different things. I actually, shadowed a doctor, a veterinary, a vet, and also I arranged some work experience where my dad worked at Shell, and I spoke to lots of different types of engineers and asked them different questions. I think initially I quite fancied structural engineering of architectural design, I seem to remember. But anyway, I settled on chemical engineering for the reasons I mentioned before. So what are my hobbies and interests outside of work? I like to exercise a lot, so I do yoga and swimming and cycling, and I sometimes I swim before work, and actually I'm off to yoga tonight. And I try and cycle from between work and home, because I did that in London, and I didn't need to deal with all the traffic, and I always felt quite lucky to do that. So I always made a vow wherever I would work, I'd be able to cycle. I also have a small cruiser, which is a very small boat in London still, and I like to cruise around on the canals. And I also love music, and I go to music festivals. As a female engineer, do I have any concerns with being limited, so reaching a glass ceiling, or do I feel that this no longer exists? That's an interesting question. So as I said, if you'd asked me that 10 years ago, I would say straight away, I don't think it exists, and I don't think these things are that obvious. And I have done fairly well. However, saying that, I still think there is a glass ceiling, especially when it comes to managerial roles or senior roles, which are traditionally seen as male roles. Having said that, it's not impossible to progress, but I do think that you need to have clear goals, make your aspirations clear to your line manager and above, and where there's limited options, be prepared to work for a new company. I mean, they sometimes say that women have to work harder and they can progress. I'm not sure. I guess there is some of that. But it's like anyone, you have to drive your own career, whether you're male or female. So what are your future aspirations? Well, my world is still my oyster. I've still got many options. I've now trained in technical safety, and they're highly desirable all across the world and quite well paid. So there's lots of different options there. I'm interested in maybe becoming a HAZOP chairman, because as I said, I do enjoy doing risk assessments, maybe one day as a consultancy, because I do like the change in routine. That's what I used to do, shift work. As a consultancy, you can be in lots of different places, and your time, your working hours are also changing. I do have maybe a small dream, or quite a big dream, that one day maybe I'd like to set up an NGO to manufacture AIDS drugs in Africa, but I'm still trying to work out if that's a reasonable dream and if it's a safe dream as well. I used to help. That was one of the processes I worked on at GSK was manufacturing AIDS drugs, and I thought it would be nice to be able to do that in the countries where they actually need those skills and they need that product. And that's something I'm looking into right now. Here's just a little bit of career highlights. I've got a silly picture there. So I've got designing and manufacturing a lab pilot plant with my own hands. That was more, I did a year out, and that was a diploma in industrial training. It was a 6-year course that I did, including a diploma, so I wanted the sandwich year. After university, I represented a spin-off company that came out of my university. One of my professors started this, and I was commissioning a novel technology. It was process intensification, they call it, oscillating baffled reactors, or as my boss likes to call it, shaken not stirred. It was a novel way of mixing. These are little colourful beads that are just showing the mixing patterns. And I represented them with a sister company in Middlesbrough. So it was based in East Kilbride and used to drive down to Middlesbrough. For GSK, I did spend about 4 years there, and I was given quite a lot of responsibility very early on to improve the biggest pharmaceutical process on site, and that was that one that I mentioned. It was called Zidovudine, and it was an access to medicine AIDS drug, which meant that they made it without profit. For the third world. I also received a recognition of achievement there with some of the work that I did, and this is a photo of the CI team, the continuous improvement team. It's a silly picture of me in the middle there, and that was on a work night out for Christmas. So on the shop floor, I really did love working in the midst of things on the shop floor as a shift team leader, and that was in North London, CCE. I was responsible for the whole site out of hours, and I really, one of the things that's memorable for me is just gaining the respect of my team as a female leader. I did many things, but that's one thing that sticks out. And I was told recently, I'm still in touch with my team, that I was developing a certain person, and I put him in touch with a new job role, sort of on day shifts, and he told me that was life-changing recently, and that was very nice to hear. And recently, as a technical safety engineer, I'm successfully challenging the client's status quo. I won't go into the technical details, but there's been a few times recently where it's been rewarding. It's been challenging to sometimes, put a stopper on things, but also very rewarding to know that the important things that you're raising are acknowledged, and potentially, obviously, avoiding a major accident like Piper Alpha there.
Thank you, Gemma, for sharing your story and insights. Just a reminder to everyone, please use the questions panel to submit questions for the panelists and the presenters. I'm afraid not all the presenters are on the panel today, but we will forward all the questions to them and get those answered, and we'll direct you as to where that will be, which will be our LinkedIn discussion group. So on to Gill Cowlam's story. So Gill graduated from UMIST, now part of the University of Manchester, with a chemical engineering degree in 1984. Her illustrious career lasts over 20 years, including working for BOC Process Group, Coulthard's Engineering, Dow Chemicals, and BP. Gill has played the role of a commissioning shift leader, safety engineer, operation auditor, production engineer, offshore installation manager, operations performance manager, contract transitions manager, and roles within the North Sea Engineering Authority. The highlights of Gill's career include becoming BP's first female offshore installation manager in the UK continental shelf region and winning the 2010 Oil and Gas UK Award for Mentoring. Gill is hoping to impart her experience to the next generation through her new engineering consultancy firm. Let's hear from Gill, this amazing role model and mentor.
Question 1. Where did you work, and what was your last position in the company?
So I worked for BP, and my last position in the company was Engineering Services Manager for the midstream assets in Azerbaijan, Georgia, and Turkey.
Okay, next question. What was it like on a normal day at work, and why did you choose to get into that line of work?
So I think the best thing to say about a normal day is every day was different. Every day was busy, always coming into new challenges, the business just throwing different questions at you, and fairly unpredictable within a normalized frame. But that was what made it exciting and great, was that actually it wasn't predictable. And going home at the end of the day having fixed the technical problems that the business had. And why did I get into that line of work? Well, it took me 30 years to get to being an engineering services manager. But it just was a natural progression through the various roles that I've had over the years. And it was great because it encompassed everything from some things that have got really close to my heart, like process safety and interview management, but also projects, providing new projects. So we did some fairly big sort of multi-million-dollar projects that I was accountable for, and actually spending the company's money wisely. So it's just it got me out of bed in the morning, got me excited. So I suppose that's kind of where I ended up there.
Okay. What has your experience been like working in a predominantly male workforce?
So I have to say, when I started work 31 years ago, I was the only female engineer in the company, and I've had a lot of positions where I've been, it's not even predominantly, I've been the only woman. When I went offshore as an offshore installation manager, I was frequently the only woman on the platform. So, and then, so that's kind of been my experience. So what's it been like? It's a bit like being at home for me. I had 3 brothers, so I grew up in a predominantly male-dominated household. So I suppose for a long time I didn't see this as being anything other than abnormal, because it had been like that at home. It was like that when I was doing my A-levels at school. It was predominantly guys doing science, predominantly guys at university. It's just the way that it's been. And you get used to the fact that men work differently from women. Tend to be, women are always looking to try and keep each other equal, whereas men are much more hierarchical. So you do have to kind of learn what's just not personal, it's just the way they are.
Okay. Why did you choose to study chemical engineering, and at which university?
So I chose to study chemical engineering. I was very lucky that back in 1980, Women in Science and Engineering was born, and they ran some summer schools, which one was at Imperial College, which I applied for, and I went along to that, and it was a week basically finding out about all different sorts of engineering. I was just a kid that was good at science and maths, and so I had just thought engineering was a logical step, and I didn't really know what branch of engineering was going to be me. Having been on that 1 week's course, found out about this thing called chemical engineering I'd never heard of, and to be honest, I don't think anybody back in my school had heard of. And I thought, this sounds really exciting and sounds like the kind of thing that's plays to my skills and I'm quite interested in. And what was great was they obviously thought I was quite promising too, because I got an award on the last night for being the most promising chemical engineer on the course. So that's why I went on to study chemical engineering, and I went to UMIS, which is now Manchester University.
Okay, interesting. The next question, I think you kind of covered it in your last answer, but we'll go through it anyway. How did you get to know about chemical engineering when you were at school?
So I think I have covered that, which is, it was just a poster that went up on the wall that said, this is WISE, Women in Science and Engineering, and come along and find out about engineering. And so I was very lucky that I had a very enlightened female physics mistress who really pointed me at that, and and that's how I found out about chemical engineering, because pretty much nobody really knew what it was, and where I was living was nowhere near any kind of chemical industry.
Okay, next question. What are your hobbies and interests?
What are my hobbies and interests? I have a lovely golden retriever who is my baby. So I like her and getting out and walking with her. I'm quite crafty, I suppose. I like to bake. I do paper crafts. I sew, do that kind of thing. And I love to travel and take photographs.
Interesting. As a female engineer, do you have any concerns with being limited, or do you feel that this no longer exists?
I think it's not as hard as it used to be. So, I mean, I've spent a lot of my life butting my head up against that ceiling. And, you know, do I feel it still exists? No, I don't. I mean, I don't think it completely exists, but it exists in some people's minds, and that's the problem. The issue is, you know, when you're going for a role at the next level up, it's what's normal for the guy that's hiring you. Because, you know, pretty much I've never been hired by a woman. It's always been a guy. And, you know, if you've got a guy who appreciates diversity, who understands that actually having somebody with a slightly different perspective can add value to the team, then that's great. And so, and from time to time, it's been a real advantage being female, because they've said, oh, let's bring something different, and that's great. But then if you've got somebody who's a bit more traditional, a bit more dyed in the wool, a bit more in the mold of I hire somebody who looks like me, then it's really difficult. So I think there are concerns for women getting ahead, but I think it's slowly changing.
That's an interesting perspective. I've never actually thought about it that way.
So it just depends who it is.
Last question. What are your future aspirations?
So I've kind of I'm now moving into a new phase of my career. I've just joined a small consultancy which my husband set up. So there's now 2 of us, and so we're thinking about moving into the phase of doing consultancy work. So I'm quite keen to get involved with perhaps more of the learning and development side of industry. And I've done lifelong mentoring, so I've been mentoring or working with schools initially, and working with technicians and young engineers all my career. And I'm looking for a way to kind of meld that with our consultancy business to kind of take it on a bit further. But possibly not working quite so many hours a week.
Well, that concludes the interview. Thank you for taking the time to answer our questions and supporting the cause.
No problem at all. It's very nice to be talking to you.
Thank you.
No, thank you very much, Gill, for sharing your story with everyone. I just want to say very briefly a huge thank you to the engineers and volunteers who actually spent their time actually capturing these recordings. So I just want to give them a bit of face time. They include Process Engineer Sarah Clark in Aberdeen, who works for Foster Wheeler. One of the voices you just heard is Joanne Tan, who is a process engineer in Aberdeen who works for Genesis Oil and Gas, and of course Adriana Vargas, who is a process safety engineer in London for ODE Limited. I think we have a tiny bit of time to help look at some questions. At this point, I'd like to reintroduce Joanne and Laura, just to say hello to everyone.
Hi, I'm Joanne.
Hi, I'm Laura.
Let's have a quick look for the questions. We did get a question in early before we started this was from a sixth form college? I think Joanne is able to give an answer to that. Joanne, do you want to introduce that question?
Yes, so this is a question from Sarah Brown at Techncial College, and she asked, what is the best way of getting in touch with people in the industry? So basically networking. In my opinion, networking is a very tricky business, especially for a shy person. So the best advice I can give to the young generation is to perhaps attend a school career event and talk to the different company representatives. They can also attend a university open house and talk to the university students there and get a better perspective of what it's like to be an engineering student and what it's like to be a professional engineer. Following on that, they could participate in networking events held by young member groups or university chapters of a professional engineering body like IChemE. And the best of all is possibly to gain some work experience shadowing an engineer for a week when you do get that chance.
Just like to also direct to the links that we're sharing on the screen at the moment. So For students who are interested in trying to find out a bit more about chemical engineering, IChemE does have a program called Why Not ChemEng. I'd advise those who have dialed in, and I think we've shared the links with Laura already, is to have a look on that website and try and find some case studies and contact the people at Why Not ChemEng and see if they can get someone to possibly come in and give your school a talk. That chimes in with Joanna's suggestion as well. And also there's member groups for IChemE where they can get in contact with a regional group if there is one in your area, and possibly they can ask about, people that may help out with the work experience requests. So that's another way you can try and get more out of IChemE in order to help you understand what chemical engineering is about. I think there are some other questions on here. What do you Joanne, I think you can definitely answer this question. It's, what do you advise for those interested in going into the oil and gas field?
That one. Well, in my experience was mostly driven by my dad's career, who was also an oil and gas engineer. I think I was amazed by how wide the industry was. Worldwide, you could go just about everywhere and you will still need oil and gas. It's quite an illustrious career, I would say, because you're always thinking about different things, for example, process operation and how you could optimize the whole operation while minimizing the impact on the environment, maximizing your profits, obviously. I think at the moment the oil and gas industry isn't getting quite a good reputation with a low oil price, and maybe seeing us as a great contributor towards global warming. But I think we're doing the very best that we can in terms of research and development and possibly creating a more sustainable environment in the future. So if you're passionate about creating a better future environmentally and also sustaining the lifestyle that we have with efficiency, I think you should take up the career in oil and gas.
No, thank you very much, Joanne. I'm afraid that's all we have sort of time to give to Q&A at the moment. Please just remember, if you have any questions, please put them in the panel if you can just now, and we'll add these to our LinkedIn discussion groups where we can add you some directions to help with the Q&A. Just to also say that if you have any questions that you have that you'd like the group to answer directly, please look at our email address, diversity@ichememember.org. We have that LinkedIn group I mentioned. We are on LinkedIn and Twitter. If you are an IChemE member, and we mention things like members groups and IChemE groups, and you're trying to get involved, I suggest you contact member groups to be a good port of call. IChemE students, I hope we have plenty of those on the line. And just a reminder about some of the other sort of webinars and talks that are available to you through IChemE on campus and the special interest groups. If you're interested in you're at university and interested in going to oil and gas, that's a good way of dialing in. Schools and colleges, another shout out again for Why Not ChemEng, IChemE's main outreach program. And just a final request from me, please fill in the feedback form. And once again, I would like to thank the huge efforts of Laura and Joanne for helping us out today, being panelists, and to the team that produced these excellent recordings. Thank you very much for your time.